Since the discovery of DNA as we know it in the early 1950s, scientists have used it to clone animals, map the human genome, and help put criminals behind bars.
Now, in a perfect example of how cutting-edge technology can trickle down to consumers, it's possible to test your own DNA at home.
A range of DIY home testing kits costing less than £200 have recently hit the market, whose results claim to tell you what exercise, diet and lifestyle is best suited to your genetic makeup, as well as your susceptibility to illness. Each test comes with a set of instructions, but what it amounts to is sending off some spit, along with an accompanying lifestyle questionnaire.
This one from Biomed is £149. They claim to be able to tell you where your ancestors are from, what kinds of foods are good for you, what diseases you're susceptible to, and for what it's worth, what kind of sports injuries you're prone to. Good, well that's up to the line. Excellent, the bubbles don't count, so it's what's beneath the bubbles. This one from Rightangled Diagnostics is a little dearer at £169.
This particular DNA test is aimed primarily at heart health. You find out if you're prone to heart disease and get information on the right diet for your gene type.
Good. Think of all this hazardous stuff going through the post. Woo! My last test is from myDNAhealth, and it's focused on nutrigenomics. How DNA can tell you what kind of food is good for you. There we are, ready to go. Pre-post. Now all I need to do is send off the samples, wait 5 or 6 weeks,
and hey presto, you get your results back. And mine are in. First up, Biomed, who give you your results online, and some of them are a little bit odd.
Personal traits, for example, I'm pleased to discover that I'm not predisposed to below average sensitivity to the smell of violets. I'd never even thought about this.
While elsewhere there was some very specific information about my disposition to Alzheimer's. It appears I'm genetically 1.32% less likely than average to develop it. The heart DNA test from Rightangled is unsurprisingly aimed at all things cardiological.
It contains the happy news that I'm less likely to suffer from atrial fibrillation, apparently, although, unfortunately, more likely to have a heart attack.
The nutrition-focused myDNA results include a phone debrief.
We can support this through daily exercise and...
as well as written results, but both seem to be mainly based on common sense.
Basically, it seems to include every bit of good health advice you've ever heard. You know, eat plenty of green vegetables, don't eat too much fatty foods, sleep well and take plenty of exercise. Well, who could disagree with that?
To dig deeper, I've come to the UK's home of DNA research at the University of Leicester, where I'm meeting Dr. Turi King, who successfully identified Richard III from his bones in a local car park. I want to find out if she thinks these do-it-yourself DNA testing kits are worthwhile.
So, I mean, how important is your genetic disposition to your health?
The science for this is moving all of the time. We're understanding more and more about how our genetic makeup does affect us in terms of disease and diet and exercise and this sort of thing, but it's very, very early days. And we also know that it's very, very complicated. It's not just what your genetic makeup is, it's your genetics with your environment. Genetics is generally not fate.
The Atlas results contain some bold claims about my ancestry, but what does Dr. King make of them?
The Atlas Biomed report goes into sort of heritage and everything and all that. I mean, I wasn't particularly convinced by what I was reading. Should I have been?
They say who you're related to, and they've said Charles Darwin, and he's just in the same kind of broad group, so there will be millions of other people who are also as equally related to Charles Darwin.
And there's me thinking I was special. What about my next set of results from Rightangled?
I noticed with that one, they often don't give you actually what your genotype is, which is actually what you really want to know so that you can actually go and learn a little bit more about it. They just say, you have an increased risk, but you don't know why.
So what about myDNAhealth and its focus on eating the right foods for your genetic type?
It gives you your genetic makeup for particular things that they've looked at, tells you about your genetic predispositions, but I wouldn't let it worry you too much because we know there's far more going on than just our genes.
Next, I'm finding out what GPs on the front line think about their patients having all of this extra info.
I think it's important to place a lot of this information into context. I think that's the key. But I'll pick a particular example. There's one here that says you have a moderate genetic tendency to overabsorb some fats in your diet. Now, how that translates into your increased risk is quite difficult to extrapolate. And I would say your risk of developing cardiovascular diseases, so stroke and heart attack, is heavily influenced by lifestyle, diet, stress, alcohol intake, how much you exercise, rather than just this minor point here. So I would view lots of this as more of a scientific horoscope rather than the gospel truth.
So where does that leave us? Well, the experts I met are certainly sceptical about the results of these do-it-yourself DNA testing kits being taken in isolation. And I reckon using a bit of common sense to live a healthier lifestyle may be better than spitting into plastic tubes.